Good evening, everybody. Are we all here? I think Martin's not here anyway, so we don't have many members in the public gallery, but I'll start with my usual opening line, which is remind everyone that I expect you to treat all members of this committee, officers and other people who have been invited to speak with respect. Members of the public who are observing the meeting should not interrupt in any way. This meeting is filmed by a member of the public, which is permitted. If anyone in the audience doesn't wish to be filmed, you will need to sit outside the range of the camera. And there is an extra item on the agenda which hasn't been published, and that is Cabinet members' priorities, which I'll take after the minutes. Are there any apologies for absence?
Yeah, we've apologies from Nick McLean. We've substituted Councillor Dean on instead. This is intended to be a permanent change.
So, welcome, Councillor Dean, to your first meeting of my panel. I know you've been here before several times. And declarations of pecuniary interest? No. Minutes of previous meeting, are they agreed?
Agreed.
And cabinet member priorities, I think Councillor Welton isn't here, so we'll just take it from Councillor Draper and Councillor Brunt. Councillor Draper, do you want to give your...
Oh yes, thanks. Getting it over nice and quick. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah,
Right.
5 minutes max.
If I take that long, no. So, colleagues, over the last 3 years, my job's been very largely defined by things that we built, or that we're building. So, in our libraries, we've had the new Collingswood Library and the Wimbledon and Mitcham Art Spaces and leisure. We've had a new leisure centre at Morden. In green spaces, we've opened Rowan Park. I'm just about to open Morley Park. And that provides with new playing fields for the Ursuline School. In Heritage, we've helped get Chapter House open at last, and we've started essential work on the canons, and it's all been pretty successful. I'm touching wood as I do that, but I want us to move us into a new phase, and to do that I'll ask for your help and ideas as scrutineers and also as ward councillors, because in order to do things we're going to need partnership and we're going to need commercial acumen. I'm going to start with regulatory services. It's the least flamboyant part of my portfolio, but it's working tremendously well, so well that we're now seen as the flagship service for London on air quality. That's not just us, of course, and that's the point. It's across 3 boroughs, Richmond, Wandsworth and us, working together. It's the partnership that's worked. And I want us to advertise that partnership. I want us to package it. And the concept of shared frontline services as a cost saver and as a step change in effectiveness throughout London. And I want us to start here in Merton, thinking beyond our boundaries, thinking how much better we could do things if we pool our resources. Now, looking at the possibilities rather than the flaws, and saying, well, if the private sector can do it, more or less, how much better if the public sector really work together properly? I mean, it's just a thought, but it's worth expanding on. Again, anyway, other priorities: parks, friends of parks. I want a far stronger relationship with friends. I want to see them helping to shape our parks into something far better than we have already. I'm not saying that it's bad, just saying it could be better still. To do that, in fact, to do anything on statute, we've got to raise the money for that, and that's why I want us to adopt a far more business-like attitude to events, a positive attitude and a partnership attitude. And it doesn't stop at parks. We're doing great things with our art spaces, Wimbledon in particular, and we're really sweating commercial opportunities in our libraries and our heritage buildings. So making sure that we do that without disadvantaging the already disadvantaged, particularly without demonising young people, is really important to me, and you, Scrutiny, can help us with that. Wimbledon. You know we have the biggest tennis tournament in the world here, and We don't really make a big deal about that, and I want to change that. I want to work with Love Wimbledon and with local people to really take advantage of the tournament for the benefit of business, for the benefit of all the Merton. Heritage. The Calendars project is on time, and it's on budget, and it's a community-based project, and I want all councillors involved. I never want any councillor through ignorance suggesting that heritage isn't at the heart of what we do. And it's only one of many heritage projects, current and future. I'd like you to be part of them too. Adult education, we're turning it around. At the next full Ofsted, I expect us to get a good judgment. That's not enough. I want us to be outstanding and to have rising roles. In particular, I want our special needs officer to be known to be outstanding, which it already is, and talked about and working at capacity. So there's loads more than that. I'd like you to ask me about it, good and bad, because there's always stuff to improve on. But when you ask, I do urge you to think about how you could help to improve things, because I believe that you, in Scrutiny, can. Thank you very much, Jack.
I'll open it out to members. Okay, Councillor Lincoln, do you have
Is
questions?
this for a film for London for next year?
The borough, sorry?
Film for next year?
Oh goodness me, yes, we are the borough of
Which you didn't
Phil.
sort of mention.
I mean,
So what
you know,
plans have you got for that?
well, the plans are ongoing. As you know, it's arm's length. It's been organised by John Merriman and many other colleagues, and I'm sure that we all feel very sad for John at the moment, because that's he's already had to take a step back because of the sad in fact his wife has just died. It carries on, and it's carrying on with help from two councillors, Linda and Janice, and well, I expect great things for the future. Nothing more than that for the moment.
Councillor Bradford.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask Nick, you spoke about adult education and volunteering and special educational needs, and I wondered if you'd discussed with the chair of the Transitions Task Group about some of the recommendations we're making there, and if you had any feedback on that from your conversations with her.
I have been. Is that going to work for me?
It does after.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I've been talking to Rebecca, particularly in terms of where we go from, for instance, Cricket Green School. There's a hiatus, if you like, between their sixth form, which has been incredibly successful, and going on to colleges, where young people coming out of one can get lost in the other. I genuinely do believe that what we're doing in adult education at the moment could get us through that, could actually help those young people not only enjoy life far more, but actually become more productive as members of the society. That's already working in certain ways at Cricket Green, and it also is working in certain ways within adult education already. And I just want to really improve what we're able to deliver.
Councillor Holden.
Yes, thank you, Nick. You mentioned the tennis and Wimbledon. Do you have any ideas how you want to actually develop the Wimbledon brand more? And one idea we have is try and make Wimbledon Hill look a bit nicer. And so anything we can do to help that and try and create a nice sense of place, we'd very much welcome.
I'd really like to talk to you about that. It's there's lots that we can do, but just making it look nicer isn't actually going to improve things. If you take, for instance, and I'm not suggesting that we do it like this, but if you take, for instance, what happens in Twickenham, where you got the rugby tournaments there, that basically people are actually selling paraphernalia all the way to the tournaments. We don't do any of that here. If you look at the second biggest tournament in the world, Flushing Meadow, there's a whole town built around Flushing Meadow. There's a huge amount of money spent, and that's for the good of the people of New York. We don't do any of that here. I really think, I don't say that we do it the same way, I don't say we do it the same way at all. I genuinely believe there are opportunities to be taken which to date have not been taken, and I want to explore those, and I want to explore them with local councillors, certainly with local people generally.
Any more okay, Councillor.
Do you find that joining up with the other bodies could, for our communication, be a bit any feedback from them which is beneficial to us prior to when you're around and around?
Yes. Not always. Sometimes, the joint projects have been less helpful than others. I mean, I'm still very sad that we lost out on kind of joint HR with Sutton, for instance, and I'm very sad that Kingston didn't join with us on libraries. I think Mike will quite well be able to answer that, because of course the work we do with the South London Waste Partnership. Certainly on the regulatory services, we've worked in the past extremely well with Richmond, still working well with Richmond. I think Wandsworth there's a bit of a way to go, but I'm confident that we will be working very well with them in the near future as well. And as far as I'm concerned, Stan, it's just the start.
Okay, Councillor Brown, do you want to give us your priorities?
Thank you. I must say, when I was first elected many years ago, I used to admire people who could go on to 5 minutes, and now I admire those who finish earlier. So hopefully I can do that. My priorities, really, I mean, my area of responsibility is much smaller in some respects, but has a very high impact on residents, and I don't underestimate that. So my areas of priority, having rolled out the new refuse collection and the new contract fully now, are to focus on street cleanliness in the next year, the coming year. We are appointing 3 extra street inspectors to work with our client officers, and I think we need to focus particularly on the high density roads. That's the roads with a lot of bus stops, a lot of properties perhaps with no gardens and still using a sack collection system, so there's all that goes with that, and the ones with a lot of flats above shops, some of which are HMOs in flats above shops. So that does lead to a high outpouring of waste. So we need to make sure that we work and focus on those areas, as well as all residential streets. Ensuring that all businesses have a waste collection contract that fits their needs. Because I personally have been outside a couple of properties where I've taken the pictures of what they put outside around the bus stops, and then a few minutes later seen them take back in again. So clearly they're not operating, they're dump fly tipping out there, and I saw labels that clearly were from the shops, and I took pictures of them, and that was enough, I think, to drive them back in. So we need to, we do have an officer who goes around and checks on the certificates that the businesses have, and I think that we need to really carry on pushing that and make sure that we make our high density or high usage thoroughfares clean. Rolling on from that, really, it's fly tipping and what's often called abandoned waste, which can be when people think they're doing the right thing by putting their bags around a litter bin, which is clearly not the right thing. They should be complying with the waste collection system that's in place. So I'm very much into, I'm carrying on and pushing more on tracing the culprits, those who do abandon waste and fly tip. We have had some success with vehicles we've confiscated, and 1 or 2 of those have been crushed as a result, and because the people couldn't come forward to claim them or answer effectively. And so where necessary, educating residents on what should and shouldn't be happening, but where we're finding fly tips, making sure that we actually identify who the cases are. I know I split open bags and take pictures. I don't expect all councillors or residents to do that. We have Veolia doing that, and we have officers, and we have plans of working with a new an enhanced system with Veolia of identifying, collecting bags, tagging them, taking them back to the depot, and an officer from the council there going through the bags, identifying addresses and taking things forward and when necessary prosecuting if that's the end result. Our community recycling sites again is linked to that whole street scene litter fly tipping, because a number of those sites are abused by members of the public, people living perhaps in flats above shops, but other people just taking along anything. I've seen carpets, I've seen furniture, all sorts of things there. We need to be monitoring those and really pushing those, because they are an effective way of collecting recycling for people, and it works for them because they're near shops very often, they're near the supermarkets. But we need to make sure they're used properly and not abused. So we will be, my focus is going to be on tightening up on those, the monitoring of those. Another area of focus for me is going to be flats, blocks of flats where there's less than 10 residents, because in some circumstances, not in all, but in some circumstances, the transition has not been smooth for those people. And clearly before the transition, some had a mixed service. Some had a domestic service and a communal service for splitting between recycling and general waste. And they fell through the cracks, I think, on our rollout. And we are working through those. We're identifying, working with the managing agents and other sort of community groups to try and make those better and have a service that's fit for purpose with those blocks of flats. I want to work towards a better online reporting tool because I think that it's a one-way street at the moment. People report it, they don't get feedback, and they're not certain that things are happening. Although I'm seeing statistics that say that things are collected. I personally have made over 60 reports since the 1st of October, and I'm pretty sure that the ones that I report, because I walk past those sites and revisit them, the things are cleared. But I persevere, and I think that we need to have a smarter way for the public to report and some better feedback on what happens with that. I think I would certainly like to build on our early successes with recycling and what's happened there. We've already seen a 20% increase in our garden waste customers, going from 7,500 to nearly 9,000 people, which has led to a huge increase in garden waste recycling. A 58% increase in food waste, so up 160 tonnes per month. So that's 16 truckloads, refuse trucks, going to recycle food now. And we've seen a large decrease in the amount of waste that's going to landfill and energy exchange. And I'd like to see that continue, 330 tonnes a month. And I'd like to see that continue because of the focus we have on waste. My high aim is to tackle the source of a lot of these litter on the street, which is plastic bottles, cans and glass. That's a large part of it. I said in other meetings that I endorse, never thought I would say it, but I endorse what Michael Gove is trying to do in introducing a deposit scheme for plastic, and I'd like to see that include glass and cans as well. And we need to actually make businesses take responsibility for that as well. So I would welcome any initiatives which bring in these machines that take back glass, plastic and cans particularly, and give them perhaps a voucher to the shoppers, but a deposit scheme would work. So anything we can do with government nationally, with London government and with businesses to do that. So that will be my icing on the cake if we can achieve some way forward on that. So that broadly covers my the things that I want to focus on, and I think that they're the things that the public want us to focus on as well, and councillors. I want to build on a partnership approach that I think is the style that I've tried to have with all the public meetings I had last year and with the workshops that I've now established with the waste collection days. We've had all the councillors together. The councillors have had the opportunity to come for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday and Monday. Next week we're having the Tuesday collection councillors together to meet with Veolia and officers. And I think that's something I want to see continuing, because in partnership we can tackle the issues and celebrate the successes, but actually try and tackle some of the problems. And I would like to be saying in a year's time that I'm still very proud of our officers that are working in this area, because they're doing the jobs that we're too embarrassed to do very often. They tap on the shoulders, knock on the doors of the people that we wish that we would pluck up the courage to do. Sometimes I do. I'm becoming a bit bolder in my approaching pension years, but I would like to really say pay tribute to those, and I'm sure that in a year's time I'll be saying the same about those officers.
Well, it seems that the cabinet member's on the road to Damascus here, and he's just worked out what his role is. I believe that this council's had a statutory duty since 1875. Question? Yes. Number one, why has he only just worked out what his role is? Number two,
I'm asking for your question of the cabinet member.
well, I'm giving you the question.
That's question one.
Why has he only just worked out what his role is? And number two, how many street cleaners are there today versus the day before the Viola contract started?
Thank you for those questions. I've not been on a road conversion. I was involved in refuse collection and street sweeping back in the 1990s. It's something that's I've been passionate about since I was first elected as a councillor. And you may have heard me say before that even in my ancestry, there were street sweepers in Wimbledon. My great-grandfather, who I'm named after. So I'm not a late convert by any means to refuse and street sweeping issues. The priority for this last year has been to roll out a new service, and that was delivering new containers to 64,000 households, which was no mean feat. We learned lessons from other boroughs. If we were doing it again, I would certainly have approached some aspects of it in a different way. But nevertheless, we got that successfully rolled out, despite a hiccup with the Veolia delivery early on, or their subcontractor. So I'm not a late convert to that. I was asked what my priorities are for the coming year. They have many of those have been going on the last year. I wasn't asked for reports for the last year. I was asked for the priorities for the coming year. As regards street sweeping, compared with before the contract started, I can claim that that was before my responsibility. So I can come back to you with an answer on that for the exact numbers.
May I just, sorry, just to finish on that. I'm surprised that saying these are objectives for this year, when we were told 3 years ago they were the objectives for 3 years ago. And I'm very surprised when he talks about his legacy in street cleaning and his passion for street cleaning. You can't give a straight answer on how many street cleaners there have been since before the contract. There are officers in this room, and there is a cabinet member in this room that should have some idea what the answer is, and I'd like the answer today.
I think he's answered that.
I will give the answer to that tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Easton.
Thank you. Mike, you spoke about flat stock shops, and I'd agree that's a real problem in my ward and lots of other wards. The feedback we get from tenants in those flats is part of the problem is food waste. I think it's the blue and purple bag scheme that they have. And I wondered what plans you had as part of your changes to solve that. And on flats with fewer than 10 units, how can we help in that project? For example, could we send you lists of such flats, for example?
Thank you. The flats above shops and the food waste issue, there have been mixed messages. I've been getting feedback from, particularly also from houses that have no front gardens that open onto the street. And I was approached by some residents on Havens Road on that issue. Previously they had food waste collection, and then they were told to put it in their bags with the general waste, which does lead to the bags splitting open again. And I was only made aware of that particular the group of residents approached me the weekend, so I'm to follow up on that and try and sort that out. Food waste for flats above shops, there's a solution achievable, because we have containers that are usable, and we just need to find a way, because flats above shops have twice a week collections. Slightly different regime, but it's the same as they had before. There was no change to that. Yes. So I really would like to push the food waste up even more, so we can find ways of doing that. And certainly that's the sort of thing we talk about in the workshops when we have councillors together on that. And we've got the Tuesday collection, which I think will include.
Unfortunately, I work full time, so attending a 5 o'clock meeting is ideal.
Right, and then on the issue of flats, again, they've come up in a number of our workshops. We are aware of them. The officers are working through, client management team are working through those. It was the sort of solutions we can have are to have larger shared bins, but not the full pallet, the Euro bins that the big blocks have. So the 360 wheelie bins may be shared between two or three flats. The ongoing issues of any shared property is that some people in there will be very diligent about their recycling and are very concerned about that, and they're disheartened when what they've put into the paper and card waste is then contaminated by someone who doesn't care, doesn't know, or can't be bothered. So we need to work with those. So yes, any properties that you're aware of that still fall in between the two, then let us know. Let me know, but let the officer know that.
Councillor Henry?
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say thank you, and I think it's you have the hardest job, one of the hardest one. The reason being for saying this, I walk Pollard's Hill and King's Marsh almost every day. I don't think 25% of the people still get it right, no matter how we advise them how to dispose of their waste, how to use the bins. I think this is an ongoing educational subject you have on there, and I really, really want to commend you and say thanks very much for all the hard work you've been doing. And as councillors, I think we need to maybe push some more to support some of the residents who are just coming in, just to educate them how to use the bins, because we have lots of people moving into the ward who haven't got any knowledge of what we have talked about before now. So as councillors, I think we need to get on our feet and either write letters, knock doors if there is something wrong. But, you've done a marvellous job. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's nice to hear. But you just reminded me of one of the issues that came out of one of the workshops we had, which is that we're looking to put together something for the estate agents to give out to new people who move into the borough, as well as having something online to be pointing new residents to. So I think that as a communication tool, we should be doing that.
Thank you, Mike. You highlighted some of the key areas, and welcome your comments on flats with less than 10 units. That's a big problem in Hillside, and the flats above shops. Leopold Road in my ward is one of many which has that problem, and it's still been ongoing for 5 or 6 years. And so we need to find a way of solving that. We're willing to work and have a chat with you to try and find a solution, because that does need to be fixed. My main question now will be instead, this energy from this energy exchange thing, is that also more commonly known as the incinerator? And what power, or what is it supplying? Is it supplying heat, or is it supplying electric? What is it actually doing?
It's used to generate electricity and hot water, and there's a housing estate. It's not in the borough, it's in Bedlington Lane, but it's going to service an estate near there, or some building works near there. So it is built to the highest standard, and it's been taken quite a while to commission, because we're concerned, or everyone was concerned, that it was right and fit and safe. The output will be published on their website and through the South London West Partnership as well. So the monitoring of the air quality in the area will be closely monitored too.
Okay. Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your report and your vision for the next year or so. Can you just expand a little bit on how you envision working with the partnership to hold Veolia to account and work solutions in that they may have thought of before?
Well, I have fairly regular meetings with Veolia, but in particular I've been bringing them to the meetings with councillors. And I think that's a big way forward. I'm not sure that many other boroughs have Veolia meeting regularly with the ward councillors in their contract area, and it's something I've introduced and I want to continue with, because I think it's very important for Veolia staff to hear exactly what members are facing and getting from the residents. We don't take up individual case work on that, we talk about general issues, and that's where we've highlighted some of the things that have come up again tonight. So that's the way to hold them to account, as well as the officers are working with the monitoring of the key performance indicators within the contract. So that's we hold them to account on that, but in particular we hold them to account by having the discussions with councillors and saying, okay, this is what you're hearing, and they have an opportunity to explain why the way of operating as well. Because sometimes it's about misunderstandings both ways, and there can be all the written work and all the paperwork given out and reports and committees and that until you actually talk face to face. Well, why do you do it that way? This is why. So it's very, very useful, that partnership approach.
Okay, one last question.
Councillor Holden.
Okay. Following up on the incinerator question, I've been reading some innovative and commercial improvements to them where you take this waste and turn it into fuel and other such things. So in particular I've seen examples in America where they're actually creating fuel for aeroplanes and other things. We could possibly looking into that as a venture and try and have something more value added rather than just generating a bit of electric.
Well, I'd be interested to see what else is going on, but there's been a lot of investment has gone into this site already, and I'm very fuel efficient, hopefully myself, and I'd like to think that everything we do is improving or doing less damage to the environment, I should say, because getting rid of waste is not improving the environment. We just have to do it in the least damaging way possible. But I'm open to suggestions of the South London Waste Partnership will do that, but there's a huge investment that's gone into that. We need to make that work. The visitor centre will be open, I understand, hopefully by the end of April, but very soon. Yeah, so it'll open for the council to visit and the public, or school passes as well.
And we move on now to Councillor Welton. Priorities.
Thank you, Chair. I've obviously a number of priorities at the moment. One of which, of course, is housing in terms of delivering on Morden. We're about to go to market in terms of selecting a delivery plan. We also shortly hope to have an announcement in terms of funding from the GLA to kickstart regeneration in Morden. This is extremely important, transforming Morden, building homes, but also as well improving the whole public realm and the environment in the town centre is absolutely crucial and essential. So over the last few weeks, including last week in the Midland Property Conference, obviously I met a number of developers. It's important as well that we do promote our borough to the outside world. It's extremely important that we get the right development partner for that development. So you've both obviously got major construction firms, but also as well housing associations. Clearly engaging with councillors on that process will be extremely important going forward, and I am very excited by it, that it's obviously all starting to come together. And we also know as well that the Mayor is extremely committed in terms of delivering this project. We've had a Wimbledon Master Plan. We had an extensive consultation which took place in the autumn. I understand there was over 800 responses to that consultation. Clearly there was a wide range of views, and actually I think it's been beneficial to actually have that debate about a wide range of issues about what kind of town centre they want to see in Wimbledon. As a council, we do believe there needs to be more office accommodation. Wimbledon already employs over 22,000 people a day. The station is the second busiest in outer London in zones 3, 4, 5 and 6. And the commercial sector will be a major driver for that town centre. We already know that occupancy rates are over 90%, but we also know as well that we do need to move forward. There has been a great deal of uncertainty about Crossrail, which I regret. I believe that we do need more capacity in terms of the public transport system, but also as well, Wimbledon Station is desperately in need in terms of rebuilding. So we hope to come back later on in the spring ultimately for council, but clearly Scrutiny will be involved in that process. We've also had the local plan consultation. Again, we've had a very large number of responses to that from residents groups and other interested parties across the borough, and clearly we hope to have a new local plan in place by early next year, but there was obviously the process of going to the inspector. Clearly in the emerging local plan, the call for sites, a number of sites across the borough have been identified for alternative land use and have actually been put forward. One of the things that will be crucial is actually delivering more homes in terms of Merton, but actually more generally affordable homes at levels that people can afford. And that leads beyond to the housing strategy. Over the next few months we will be starting consultation on a new housing strategy. This is the first housing strategy for 6 years on the council, which will look at housing across a whole range of issues, delivering more social homes, the private rented sectors, 10 years, but also as well in terms of the different types of housing in terms of adult social care. It's crucial that we do deliver more homes in Merton, because we have been set very high targets by the Mayor of London in the Emerging London Plan. We've been set a target of 1,400 realistically. I don't think that will be obtainable, and we have made representations, but we also know as well that delivering homes will be crucial in the coming years. So there's been sites put forward. Clearly again that will be open to scrutiny. We've also had the regeneration, the carrying regeneration was approved last year, £1.2 billion. I know Scrutiny has been actively involved with that, and shortly we will be having the submission of the further stages for the High Path estate and Ravensbury as we move forward with that. I'm also as well delighted that the regeneration has been shortlisted for a number of planning awards at the ceremony later this year, which was announced earlier today, and I'd like to obviously pay tribute to the work of the future Merton team in that. So there is a hell of a lot happening. The next year is obviously about delivery. Clearly there are many challenges. Obviously the market out there is not overly strong. We've had a slight dip in terms of the overall number of planning applications here in Merton, but there is a number of large-scale developments which are up before planning at the moment. The other part of my portfolio, which is very wide and encompassing, is obviously parking. We've just started in terms of the parking consultation here in Merton, obviously looking at on and off street parking and residents' parking permits as well. We believe that there is an air quality crisis in this borough in terms of emission, and that is obviously one of our top priorities for us as a borough. And in terms of the highways contract, we discussed at the last scrutiny panel, but the highways contract is coming up for renewal, and obviously we'll see what the tenders bring in, but that will be something for later this year. So obviously that's just a few issues in terms of my portfolio, but I know obviously there is many issues that people may wish to.
Okay, Councillor Morden.
Okay, the microphone's buzzed. Thank you. So, thank you, Martin, for that update. That was very useful. And my first question is, did you enjoy your publicly funded junket last week? And did you sign up any contracts to justify you going there? Thank you.
I think I dispute that. Last week I had over 40 meetings with a wide range of different companies. It was part funded by London councils So a range of different councils were there, including the Conservative leader of Wandsworth Council, but also as well other things. I think it's very important in terms of promoting your borough, but clearly in terms of any contract for Morden, there is a lot of interest from developers out there, and that would obviously be part of a procurement process. But what I am passionate about is actually promoting this borough and selling this borough about everything that's actually happening here in Merton. That's extremely important going forward, because this is a huge project which will go over many years, and it's important to get that right, but also as well in terms of delivering that home. So clearly councillors will actually be actively involved in the process as we select that development partner, but we obviously just don't sign contracts willy-nilly. So.
Councillor Macon.
Surely the rebuilding of Wimbledon Station comes up under Crossrail. Don't Crossrail do that?
That will.
Is that the aim of the Crossrail project?
It obviously is part of the Crossrail project, and there's various options, as we well know, were put in the first consultation. Clearly things have been significantly delayed. They hope to launch a further consultation late in 2016, and we're now in the spring of 2019, and it doesn't look like even a consultation has been embarked upon this year, which does cause an element of uncertainty because it pushes Crossrail further and further back. They were looking at an opening date of 2032. Now clearly that will be a challenge, but we know that additional transport capacity in Wimbledon is actually desperately needed. But in my view that station does need to be rebuilt. It's the 22nd busiest station in the country, second busiest in outer London, and anyone who uses Wimbledon station knows that rebuilding that station is actually a priority. So obviously, we are pushing Network Rail in terms of that, because if Crossrail is significantly delayed, it's still my view that station does need to be redeveloped and actually rebuilt, because in all honesty it's not fit for purpose, and I think we'll probably know that ourselves when this.
Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to come back to you, Nathan, very briefly. I wondered if you could outline how you're going to measure the success of the visit this time in determining whether you'll go again in the future. Thank you.
I think obviously we do a full evaluation of it. I certainly found it incredibly worthwhile in terms of following on from MIPM, follow-up meetings with developers, but also as well in terms of getting the right partner. People know that Merton is actually open for business, that we are seen as attractive, and actually going out there and procuring that developer is actually crucial going forward. We were lucky to meet with a number of chief executives of major construction firms last week, and boroughs that have been before. It's the first time that Merton have gone to this conference, have actually benefited. And so I would say that I go to other conferences as well, and one of the things that is essential is actually selling this borough, but also as well making that link. So there's a lot of interest from developers out there, and I think it was a trip to MIPM that was worthwhile, and it was an extremely busy and very hectic and demanding 3 days spent there.
Councillor Dean.
I'm going to let you off, MIPM, because I haven't got one eye. 4 questions really. First statement, I know we have experts in the room to do with housing, but I think one of the challenges has been there's a lot of, we have an ageing population across the United Kingdom, including the London Borough of Merton. And a lot of the larger houses have not many people who are getting older, I don't feel there's been enough emphasis in the private market, and maybe not the public market, for homes for older people that are available, that they can move in and therefore free up the supply. I think the other one, which is of equal importance really, is sort of more sheltered housing for people with special needs. Again, it's a haphazard market across London, but I certainly think that Sutton have always looked at this differently to Merton, and I'd hope that Merton could look at it the way that they do. Then I had two particular questions, or actually one's half a statement. Crossrail 2, I would like to see, I don't think there's anything wrong with the transportation in Wimbledon. It's some of the best in the whole world actually outside Tokyo. There are no bigger stations in Europe outside central terminus. I just wondered if we can actually have a transport strategy to get you into central London and out of London in Mitcham and Morden and Collieswood, which we don't have. I'm just wondering if we can have, I'm asking the questions now, if that's all right, did barrack you. If we could move away from Wimbledon's excellent transportation and we look at the rest of the borough. And the other question is, how was the decision taken on the number of homes per annum that Merton must build between the Mayor and the Council? Because I read at the time that the Labour Party were very pleased with the number. So I'm just trying to understand, were you dictated to by the Mayor, or did you wholeheartedly take the number on and now you realise that you can't deliver it?
I think on the first point, you raised the issue in terms of sheltered homes and homes for learning disabilities. What we are doing at the moment is a strategic housing market assessment, looking at 10 years, do we have enough of them homes, do we have too many, and actually doing extensive work which will actually feed in to the housing strategy. It's important that we actually get these things right, and that will obviously form a major basis, in terms of the tenure of housing. Do we have too much, do we have too little, but also as well, where the housing is located, because we are aware that we do have an ageing population here in Merton as a whole. You also mentioned Crossrail 2, and at the same time mentioned Tokyo. Somebody's been to Tokyo. I think our station's actually quite quiet, probably compared to Tokyo. If anyone's been to
Tokyo.
Yeah.
Except Tokyo.
So,
Tokyo is not.
Shibuku and Shinjuku Station is.
I said except Tokyo.
I think in terms of Crossrail 2, it will have benefits, especially if there's a station at Tooting Broadway. One of the issues at the moment is capacity issues in terms of the Northern Line. Now the frequencies have been increased, but clearly if Crossrail 2 feeds into Tooting Broadway, which we are obviously very supportive of, given that it has good transport links with the Mitcham area, but also as well will help relieve the chronic overcrowding which happens on a near daily basis on the Northern Line. It's something that will provide additional capacity as well, and obviously as well as allowing extra routes through to London. In terms of Mitcham, obviously we've had the opening of Mitcham Eastfield Station. We have the Thames Link. I would obviously like to see more frequent services in that line. Clearly there is capacity issues at certain junctions within that borough. So it's increasing the overall transport capacity of the whole network, which then has subsequent knock-on effects. But obviously we are very lucky in terms of Merton, is that we are the only borough in London with four forms of transport. We've got a tram system which provides very frequent services from the Mitcham area over to Croydon and Wimbledon, connecting in. We've also got bus, train and tube. And the final point in terms of the London plan, clearly that's at public inquiry stage examination at the moment. We have put representations forward. I think it's crucial that we deliver more homes in this borough but sometimes we are realistic about those targets as well. And clearly, obviously, other boroughs as well have put forward representations. It's my view Civic is delivering a lot more homes in London than the previous mayor.
Just one last question from Councillor Fairclough.
Thank you. It was on the local plan actually. The schools planning figures in the local plan indicate that school population is going down, so there's no additional capacity expected to be needed in the local plan. How does that fit with the London plan housing targets, and how will those contradictions be dealt with?
I think in terms of the school projections, I haven't got all the figures going forward. Obviously, when I was Education Cabinet member, we had a very major forecast up until 2022. I think with school figures, they can fluctuate a lot. There has been a dip over the last 3 years in terms of the school figures, but clearly, obviously, there will be a demand for school, and it's important that that extra and additional capacity is there, and in terms of planning ahead. So we've had obviously secondary schools which are full this year, which wasn't the case a few years ago here in Merton. Clearly primary school figures have changed. I think the forecast is there's going to be an increase going forward, but that capacity is actually in the schools as well. I think forecasts a few years before can actually change quite rapidly in terms of school. We don't want to obviously be in a position in a few years' time where we have a lack of school places. We've delivered 22 additional forms of entry here in Merton, but that capacity also as well has to be there for future growth figures.
Thank you, Martin. Mr. priorities, and we move on to the next one.
Sorry, we move on to, is it, yes, James, just give your
Thank you, Chair. Now, back unfortunately, just to Neil Milligan's apologies. He has intended to be here this evening, but unfortunately, sciatica means he's probably lying somewhere trying to ease the pain as we speak. This is a report in two sections. One is on the development control function, and one is on the planning enforcement function. And while it's ostensibly about the performance of those, I thought it would just be useful to give a very quick background to the nature of those services. The development controls function, stemming from the 1946 County Country Planning Act with subsequent revisions, is really there to control the quality of development. And I think what the development controls team is there to do is to balance that with the current national planning policy framework, which is a presumption in favour of development. Merton as a borough seeks to balance the quality of development with actually resolving planning applications and the timelines that are set out by central government. And that's one that we believe is to get the right balance between the quality of development versus the speed at which we determine planning applications. We'll see from the report that there's a large volume of applications come through. They're broadly into three categories. One are minor applications, so that's 1 to 9 residential units and below 1,000 square metres of space. That could be commercial, hotel or otherwise. Majors, which is 10 plus, 1,000 plus, and then there's others which are things like household extensions, loft extensions, and those formed by a significant majority, the largest amount of the planning applications received. The report sets out from 2012 through to 2018 the performance figures, and just for clarity's sake, those are calendar years because MHCLG does monitor on a calendar year, which confuses us as we monitor it based on the financial year of the council. You'll see that from 2012 through to 2016 there was a steady increase in planning applications right across the majors, minors and others. And this report is really focusing that we saw a different performance in 2017, particularly around others' applications. We have targets that are set out in our service planning. You'll see those are currently 65% for minors, 80% for others, and 60% for majors. We're also governed by a target from MHCLG, which is a blended rate of all of those, which is 70% performance against target. we've achieved through all those years, particularly in latter years, that figure for MHCLG, which has allowed the council to apply a 20% increase on planning applications fees that's been invested back into the service. But there is no sort of league table of planning performance. Although the Planning Advisory Service did do that in the past, there's not really a league table across, a formal league table across all planning authorities. I think to sort of draw attention to the performance in recent years, you'll see that planning application numbers peaked in 2016. 2017 we're seeing a slight decrease and it's stabilised around that figure. And very generally, planning application volumes track the general state of the economy. During 2017, our performance was below target in others, and for many of our residents, that's where we see the main functions of the planning service coming into play. Although it was 3% shy of our target, nevertheless it was a dip in performance. And we don't want to just maintain the level in the targets in our service plan. We want to be a class-leading planning performance throughout London. During that year, we had a team that was largely based on a number of established permanent members of staff, and also a high volume of agency staff. And we had what I would call the perfect storm of great competition throughout London for that resource, against an increasing volume of planning applications. So the management action we took was to recognise that we needed to stabilise the team by having more permanent staff. And I'm pleased to say that we've managed to convert the vast majority of what were agency staff into permanent members of staff, and we've seen that through the increase in performance in 2018. I think we recognise that taking swift management action was the necessary action to address that performance figure. I think it was also one where using enhancements coming through and upgrades in IT systems and greater productivity, we were able to get greater productivity out of the teams. Because you'll see that over time the actual levels of staffing have reduced from a peak of 32.5 full-time equivalents in 2011 to 26.5 from 2015 onwards. The team stabilised at that point. It is, we do have a number of staff who are beyond establishment, but we've maintained that. And we've also supplemented the development control team with some external resource from Capita Consulting, who've taken on some of the more minor applications in order to manage our workload and to make sure that we provide a quality service at the same time as doing it with reasonable speed for the applicants. I think other things to draw attention to that although it appears in paper that the volume of majors is quite small, it relies the fact that 10 and above also includes things like the stadium application, which includes 600 residential units. During the period of 2016-17, we were also in discussions with our neighbouring boroughs of Kingston and Sutton, looking at the possibilities of shared services. There was a lot of work done during that time, and whilst I can say that we compared favourably in terms of productivity with those boroughs, they also were sharing that pain of recruitment and retention of staff, and therefore the ability to join services just wasn't practical at that time. Therefore we've went through and continue to have our own development control service, and we were able to see that we've got planning performance figures for 2018 and indeed in 2019 to date significantly above target. I think it's also worth highlighting that a measure of performance is also the fact that we have a limited number of appeals, and where we do have appeals we exceed our performance in terms of our expected success against those appeals. So moving forward, the objective is to maintain and grow that performance. That's through greater efficiencies using IT. We have a planning system called M3 that's currently being upgraded, and that will also then be supplemented by a significant upgrade during the latter part of 2019 to 2020, which will give greater reporting ability to the team, which will also mean that in terms of performance management there will be greater clarity and greater ability to identify further dips in performance and to address those issues more quickly. I think that's really capturing the main issues in performance in development control. Do you want to take questions now before I go on to planning enforcement?
Okay, if you're going to take planning enforcement next, then I'll just ask my planning question only. I'm generally thinking planning things have got better, so well done on that. My main question is when do you expect to withdraw the capita support, or is that going to be used as more of a long-term sort of extra resource for your planning service?
We're using the capita contract very, very frugally at the moment. Indeed, we haven't actually been looking at planning applications for some months now, but we hold them there as a call-off contract so that if volumes were to increase, it gives us some resilience.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about appeals and paragraph 2.9. I wondered if you might be able to tell us how many appeals in a year there generally were. And as that paragraph also talks about the process of negotiation. I wondered if you might outline how that happened and whether there was any benchmarking on that at all.
Apologies, I don't have the figure for appeals. I can provide that to you. I mean, the general objective with appeals is to see whether or not there is something that can be revised, but notwithstanding that, the applicant can choose to exercise the right to appeal. Not every applicant does that, and where they do, they then are assigned a case, and ultimately it comes before an inspector, either through written representations or through actual physical hearings. I think what we try to do is to work with the applicant to overcome any issues in the application, and therefore they may be represented subsequently. But we need to check the numbers on that where we've successfully undertaken that.
As part of that, might you also be able to tell us about the paragraph talks about sort of negotiating with developers at the application stage, and I'd be interested to know whether that's just the case officer or whether that's the wider department, and how that's kind of measured in the benchmarking of that.
So each application is assigned to a case officer. That case officer is managed within an area team. We have a north and a south team, and then they're overseen by the development and building control manager. Also, with myself and colleagues from Future Merton, we will consider there's an application that really requires a division-wide response to it. Each application really needs to be considered in its own merit. We have some applicants who undertake the pre-application service, so they get a response on the nature of their application before it's locked up into too much detail. There's also the design review process, which is an independent design assessment, which also then informs the applicant. And then anybody that's been to the Planning Applications Committee knows the Planning Applications Committee takes a lot of interest in how the design review panel is considered and scored. But each one is one where it will depend on the nature of the applicant. Some are very willing to embrace the views of the case officer or the council as a sustainable community teams. Others do not. The National Planning Policy Framework cannot make us impose anything on them. And really what we aim to do is to work to get an application that's a quality, so that when it goes to committee, it's generally approved. Where that's not the case, the developer does take their chances and they take their day at Planning Applications Committee.
The council has a very good record when it comes to appeals, and it's really a statement that I'd like the planning officers to remind themselves of that, because when they come to the committee they're often saying yes, but the applicant can appeal, which we all know. And I would just ask them to look at the figures, to recognise you have a very good team, you do a very good job.
I'd like to move on to the planning enforcement. This is one of the pictures, I think, a much regarded area of work by residents and indeed by councillors. But it's not actually a statutory part of our business, and therefore it's one where we rely on a policy that the council has approved. And very often planning enforcement is one where initially we get the cases coming through via the ward member. That's very often to anonymise the source of the request for enforcement. You'll see that we have a significant volume of planning enforcement cases that come through. And on page 15, you'll see the reinforcement cases and case closures from the period 2012 through to 2018. 30% of cases are considered not to have any merit and are closed quickly. I think what we'd highlight is on page 13 there's the outline from 3.6, 1 through to 6 in terms of the service standards that we seek to adhere to. And hold our hands up and say we've not, some of the frustration of planning enforcement is we've not always been able to get back to the inquirer during that time frame. I think that's partly through the volume of work. You'll see that we've gone from 4 members of the planning enforcement team through down to 3, but within that we've also had recruitment problems. I think the report highlights that despite 2 rounds of recruitment, we've not been able to successfully appoint and fill a vacancy within the planning enforcement team, and therefore we have relied on agency staff, and indeed we also use the capacity contract for planning enforcement work. Nevertheless, I think that there's also about the transparency of the planning enforcement service, and what we aim to do is to get back to very often the ward member with indicative timescale of assessing the case, and also an indication when we think we'll have a resolution to it. Very often it's found that the case isn't based on a planning matter, and I think what the report has outlined is where it's actually a planning matter as opposed to what very often would be a neighbourhood dispute or some kind of other enforcement action. And I think as the report highlights, additionally, we also work with colleagues across the department in the enforcement review to make sure that it's not a planning enforcement case that is dealt with appropriately. I think what we have seen is that the technology, use of mobile working and use of e-forms, which would speed up the process and also allow for greater interaction with residents, isn't all it could be. As part of the upgrades to M3 I mentioned earlier, it will be possible to do that in a way that is slicker for the planning inquiry, the planning enforcement inquiry, but also will speed up the process. I think what we're dealing with is a backlog of planning enforcement cases. You'll see that although we had a significant amount of closures during 2018, it really hasn't got down to dealing with the backlog. And as we found in recent, there's been a large amount of effort in recent months into looking at those the closure of those back cases. I think what we're finding is a lot of them weren't ones that had a planning enforcement rationale behind them, but nevertheless they were held in our books, and equally the individuals that were making inquiries about those hadn't had any feedback and found that frustrating. So one of the main objectives moving ahead is to have a more intuitive IT-based system to close the caseload and those that have got some, they're some years out of date, but nevertheless to formally close them. Until we do that, they are presented as ones that are outstanding. And as we move forward, really is to look at the capacity of the team to try and get full-time permanent members of staff to use the IT upgrades to further improve the service delivery on that area of work. And I think for the time being, we've also been using some days with the general planning team to work on the planning enforcement cases to help reduce that backlog. And what we hope to do is get back to a steady state where we're able to deal within a year the planning enforcement cases that come forward within an individual year, rather than dealing with those and a backlog from previous years.
Yeah, thank you James for the update. So planning enforcement is more of a worry for me than planning itself. Last year at this point we were very critical of planning enforcement, and various things were suggested to improve it. In my opinion, nothing has substantially changed, it's possibly got worse. The former councillor for Merton Ward, certain John Sargent, he suggested a sort of case review of all the older ones, and there's nothing in the report that references clearing the backlog of old cases to find out why it's still on the books when it's probably been closed out. And secondly, a lack of reporting back to members. So, in my opinion, we have to keep chasing all the people part in. So we might end up having 4 cases maybe representing just one matter, but because nobody's actually actioned it in the department, you've actually made it once for your own back. So if you could iron out those processes, you'll find your caseload will probably drop quite dramatically, quite quickly.
I acknowledge that the IT system is one where we've tried to delve back into the backlog. Unfortunately, the system as we currently have it doesn't allow us to do that. It's likely to be that when we get the upgrade later in the year that we'll be able to do that, check back through and see whether or not we had multiple reporting of the same cases. I don't like blaming the tools we have to hand, but the IT system is too clunky at the moment for us to do that. Fully aware that Scrutiny previously requested, if you like, the ones that were sort of 2-3 year outriders in terms of this, just not being able to provide that at this moment in time.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to ask why in 2015 and 16 there were way more cases closed than in other years either before. I obviously understand 2017, but they seem to sort of stand out years. And secondly, you mentioned neighbour disputes, and I wondered how you determined where a matter was a neighbour dispute as opposed to a genuine enforcement issue.
During 2015-16, we had full complement of 4 staff, and we also had those permanently based within the team, and we didn't have any. We weren't carrying any vacancies at that time, so the performance was manageable within that period of time. Hence, the rate of closure was enhanced compared to today's. In terms of how do we determine whether it's a neighbourhood dispute, I'm quickly checking to see where we clarified what the actual nature of a complaint is, but what officers do is make the assessment against the criteria outlined at 3.7 as to what a breach of planning is, and therefore determine whether it's something that falls within the purview of planning enforcement or not. It's quite a technical assessment. It largely is based on, is it something we should have a planning permission or not, and if it's not, it's determined that it may well be a neighbourhood dispute such as a party wall dispute or some other kind of civil matter. And that's something that is available online for residents to view.
Councillor Henry? This is a question for my knowledge. Okay, when the planning application has been submitted and granted and the work starts, does anyone from your team goes out and check to see, how it's going, if it's in line with the application? So, yeah.
I'd love to say that with the for every planning application we do that, but we've got a volume of about 4,200 applications, so we do not do that as a matter of course. On major applications, we will work to ensure that it's largely in line. But very often it's either it's reporting through planning enforcement that we're aware of that. What we do is we do an annual audit of housing starts, but we don't check the application and the implementation of that application against the plans. We just don't have the ability to do that, and that's something that no local authority does.
Thanks, James. Thanks for that. But this case, it would appear to me that there would always be a backlog. Would you be able at any time to clear a backlog to the extent where it's working within the bound of what you would expect?
That's an awkward question. I think what we've got is a performance figure within our service plan for planning enforcement backlog. I think that was based on previous benchmarking against other authorities when there was a system of comparison. I think that what the objective is to see what the efficiency. You'll see that the amount of cases per officer has almost doubled in recent years. I think it'll be a case of seeing whether or not that is sustainable and whether or not the backlog is one where within a year we can clear those off. It's not 400 at the beginning of the year. We get a number coming in each month, and it's how much we can clear within each month. You'll see that very few actually result in any breaches being or any enforcement notices I think possibly this is about how we can get back within our service standards to informing anybody that's raised an enforcement issue and just let them know what's happening. Certainly what I'd be able to report is that when any case that is raised is dealt with within those service standards of when you aim to get back and inform, as usually ward councillors, that's happening. People are content with that rather than the absolute getting through the volume at pace. So I think that we believe that the figure of backlog is probably reasonable with benchmarking. But I think as the report also says, I think we need to review the planning enforcement policy moving forward to make sure that we've got it right, and that may result in some proposed changes.
Thank you for that. Okay, one last question, and a quick one, if you need to move on.
Unfortunately, because planning applications are statutory and enforcement is not statutory, we're therefore assuming that the resident is following rules. And we know from experience that residents don't necessarily follow rules. That's why we need the enforcement section. Ideally, you need more staff looking at this. That would help. Invariably, if you could, mind you do have a problem recruiting. I think that's possible to say.
Oh, okay, tomorrow comment. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. We now move on to item 6, housing supply task. Housing supply task group. Steve Langley.
Yeah, good evening everybody. The Housing Supply Task Force and the recommendations that are attached in front of you, for those of you who may remember, this was a task group that arose about 2016, and what you've got in front of you is the final, I hope, requirement to bring it here today, and most of the actions we would say are now complete. It's a shared piece of work by Community and Housing and Future Merton Sustainable Communities. I'm not planning to read every recommendation out to you, but do you have any comments? You do.
No, the only comment I've got is that reading the task group, the recommendations that were made have all got GNITs in them, which means they've been dealt with. Have you, as an officer, found that it's, how would you evaluate the task group as to this committee doing that? Has it worked? Have you done any value to what you've been doing?
Okay, so how's it worked? Well, it's focused our minds. Obviously, what happens always, Russell, as quickly as you produce an action plan, the rules change, both locally and centrally, so it's always quite difficult to follow, but certainly it's focused our minds.
So you would say it had value?
I think it's had value, yeah.
That's what we'd like to hear.
Good.
Thank you. I wondered on recommendation 12 why it's been removed. That may just be because I'm a newish councillor. On recommendation 13, it's using the housing development company to ensure the council meets its policy on affordable housing. I think the target is currently 40%. As far as I'm aware, the housing development company's plans do not yet include them meeting 40% target in their developments.
Perhaps I can answer that. The housing company will have to be policy compliant. It certainly is aiming to deliver as much affordable housing as is viable. It will be open to the same level of scrutiny in terms of its viability assessments as any other developer. The development plans are still in design. And like all applicants will have to publish a viability assessment because it's a requirement now of the planning process. So the objective is the same for the property company as any other developer. It will come down to the viability at the time of coming in with the planning application.
And on recommendation 12?
Okay, I do remember that. I think at the time that the recommendation was removed, it was particularly focused upon stock-owning local authorities that would have overcrowding strategies. As a non-stock-owning authority, we wouldn't have one.
Any other questions? Next one is housing supply tax.
Okay, you have in front of you a brief update, and it is somewhat brief, regarding the implementation of the Homelessness Reduction Act 2017, probably the biggest change in homelessness law since the 1977 Housing Act. So fundamentally changed all the rules, nearly 40 years of rules. The main changes are everybody that comes to the council that's threatened with homelessness, and that's been changed. In the old days, you were threatened with homelessness, you'd be likely to lose your home within 21 days. The government have extended that to 56 days. The council is required to see everybody on a one-to-one basis and produce a personalised housing plan. It's a statutory requirement. Other changes linked to the Homelessness Reduction Act. At the beginning of the process, it's priority need blind. Previously, unless you had a priority need for accommodation, let's say perhaps you were a vulnerable person due to pregnancy, old age or disability, there was no statutory requirement to prevent homelessness. But with the introduction of the new Act, it's priority need blind and everybody is entitled to the 56 days prevention period. It produces a requirement that customers cooperate with the council staff in terms of preventing or relieving their homelessness. So a classic example of that might be if somebody's receiving universal credit or housing benefit towards their housing costs, it might make perfectly good sense to all of us around the room that we would pay our rent and pass it on to the landlord. Sometimes, for all sorts of reasons, some very genuine reasons from time to time, that might not be happening. It might also be an issue about applying for the right benefits at the right time. It also introduced that the council's duties can end by the offer of a 6-month assured short-hold tenancy, and the council can close the case on that individual at that time. And it also introduced a right of the duty to refer. So some public authorities have a statutory duty imposed upon them when they see people in their workplace if they're threatened with homelessness. So for example, the DWP has a right of referral and a duty to refer people that come through its offices into the job centres. If they tell the job worker that they're going to lose their home, there's a requirement upon the DWP to write to the council in an appropriate way, and we have to respond to that referral within a specified period of time. We've seen an increase in caseload of about 55%. We've probably seen since last April just over 2,500 individuals, of which about 1,300 of those have translated into casework. Some cases are straightforward, see them quite quickly. Other cases, a bit more complicated. And personal housing plans, there's a requirement in the plan that we understand and identify support needs. So if somebody has, for an example, an underlying mental health problem, and we identify that as being a cause and effect to an incident of homelessness or a threat of homelessness, we're required in law to contact appropriate mental health services, care coordinators, GPs and doctors to join the dots up. What the Act has also meant is that we have to look more closely. Somebody will present with an arrear. It's looking at why they've got into arrears, not necessarily say you're in arrears and you're going to lose your home. It's understanding. And as part of the government's recording, they've introduced a new method of recording called H-click. It used to be called the P1E stats. It was all very basic. I don't suppose anybody really read them very much. But H-click goes really into a person's personal circumstances. The HRA is coming up for renewal. Government are going to review it to see what's worked and what hasn't. There's discussions around the introduction across the country of homelessness reduction boards. What that shape that will take, I haven't really got much idea. And what's worked, what hasn't. What the Homelessness Reduction Act hasn't done, it hasn't increased supply, and we've talked about that briefly here. What it has done is put homelessness prevention on the map in a statutory sense. You'll see that overall, Merton has low numbers in temporary accommodation. Currently there's about 170 odd households in temporary accommodation that we've accepted under homelessness duties. That compares favourably with the rest of the country, which in totality there's about 83,000 households in temporary accommodation, of which 54,000 are in the London area. So in summary, still working our way through the Homelessness Reduction Act, still need to understand what works and what doesn't, have to get to understand what personal housing plans mean, have to spend time on them. It's very busy, a bit like planning, very consuming. Just a quick whistle-stop tour of homelessness reduction. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for that. It's a good update. I've just got one main question on section 2.6 of the report. It highlights section 21 of the Housing Act, and you've asserted here that there are genuine reasons for why landlords might want it. But we've been hearing in the news, and generally there seems to be a feeling out there that that has been used in an aggressive way by landlords to punish residents, renters possibly, who are complaining about minor things like boilers needing repair, leaks, things like that. And then, so that's what we keep hearing, and some of us have been approached by various campaign groups about this, and it's beginning to be an issue in London. So I was just wondering how you respond to that.
Well, I think the first thing I'd say that since 1988, the Housing Act introduced a complete change to tenure within the private rented sector pre-1998. For those of you that can remember that far back, like old timers like me, you had the old regulated tenancies, protected tenancies. You could only be evicted through fault reasons. Generally, it was really, really hard to evict any regulated tenant from their home. The 90 assured short-hold tenancies for non-resident landlords, you can only have an assured short-hold tenancy if your landlord doesn't live on the premises with you. It's a non-fault eviction. A 2-month notice does not have to specify any grounds for possession. Providing the notice meets the requirements of the Act, the court must grant a possession order. No questions. It's the biggest cause of homelessness in Merton and in London. In answer to your questions, the government introduced a process where retaliatory evictions. So if a tenant has complained to the council's environmental health department, housing services, that they've got a dodgy boiler, they've got damp and mould, and the notice is served in accordance with the Housing Act 2004, and the landlord thinks, well, I'm having enough of that. We can prevent the homelessness for a period of 6 months. But what you will hear, landlords the competition for homes in London and in Merton is fierce. People who are welfare dependent, and I don't mean that they don't go to work, I mean people that are on a low income, are in competition with people who are earning high levels of income. And that puts them at a disadvantage. Some landlords, I'm sure, will take a higher rental income. If you're on benefit, you're subject to the local housing allowance. It's the limit as to how much benefits will pay, and that causes tensions. I know the government are beginning to look at tenure types. If you think a 6 month let is no time at all, you can move in 26 weeks later, you might have to pack up and start again. The good news is we've been running a rent deposit scheme for many years now. We haven't done it recently, but about 2 years ago we did some data research on how many of those tenancies are sustained, and about 72%. So although you do hear horror stories about landlords, some of them are really good.
But you don't hear them.
Pardon?
You don't hear
You
them.
don't? No.
Thank you. On that, would it be possible to get some of the statistics on the number of private rented tenants that you've assisted and other statistics around that?
Yes, no problem, sir.
Thank you. And on the paragraph 2.7, which is about the number of episodes of homelessness prevented since the Act came into force, there's 426, and I think the total caseload is about 2,500, which is about 17% or thereabouts. I wondered what happened in the rest of the instances.
So, of the 2,500 that walked through the door, 1,300 of those were threatened with homelessness. What's changed, what didn't change, is whilst you have the prevent duty across all those cases, those households who are not in priority need do not benefit from being provided with emergency temporary accommodation, so they fall off the caseload, I'm afraid.
Yeah, very good report, as ever. So a couple of points which I've moved here. First question to answer all together, are the government bundling you a few bob for all the work you're doing? And secondly, are you involving people like St Mungo's in helping some of these? And thirdly, we all see that this kind of public face of homelessness is on the streets. Is that, can you give me an idea of the percentage of those people on the streets versus your total homelessness?
Okay. So I'll work backwards, if I may, particularly around, I think you're referring, Councillor, to the rough sleeper population. So the council recently carried out an estimated count, which we're required to do so, on the numbers of rough sleeping. What rough sleeping isn't is, I'm not trying to be flippant, but it's not somebody who's been out on a Friday night in Wimbledon and falls over and lands in a shop. You have to be bedded down, just bedded down. So the last count counted roughly 26 rough sleepers in Merton. Rough sleeping is really complicated, as you know. It's not just about homelessness, it's much bigger than that. We're working with the government. They have bunged us a few bob in terms of trying to relieve homelessness and relieve rough sleeping. We've recently been advised that we've got a few bob from government on the Controlling Migration Fund, which is looking at rough sleepers who are subject to immigration control and how we can work with them to either regularise their immigration control in the country or reconnections. They've bunged us a few bob on homelessness prevention activities. What's changed on rough sleepers, you'll know that the council's required to respond to the severe weather protocol for temperature drops to minus. That's controlled by the mayor now. He calls the rough sleeping winter period, and the council signed up for the In for Good principle, which is significantly different to before. whereas you could put them in on Monday if it was really cold and Tuesday the sun came out and it was almost a sunny and warm and you'd ask them to leave. Once you put a rough sleeper in, you're required now to keep them in temporary accommodation until you find a housing solution of some description. So we work really closely with Spear, who have a rough sleeper house, a stepping stone stage process in Mitcham, that's been there for many years. It's never caused any problems for local people or comes on people's radars. And through the controlling migration front, we're working with Spear to get another house. So it's a complicated, there's not a silver bullet, but we are trying to do our best, to be honest.
Okay. Thank you for your report.
Right. I just want to know something. For the newly built houses, how does the allocation goes? This goes for people who have been on the waiting list for a very long time or for priority needs?
Okay. So, it's a bit of a long, I'll try and make it quick. The government prescribe who should get priority for an allocation, and they call it that when you devise an allocation scheme or have an allocations policy, you have to give reasonable preference to certain classes of persons. In plain English, what it really means, you have to give a helping hand up the list to certain groups of people. Those people are generally people who are in the most acute housing need, which is homeless people. Followed by people living in overcrowded, insanitary conditions, or have got severe medical detail. The rules, all councils, including Merton, we have to have an allocations policy, and all the rules are in there. Very quickly, we only let about 350 properties per year. They're the only units that become available, so demand is fierce.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the town centre regeneration.
Thank you, Joe. This is our usual 6-monthly run through of the town centre regeneration updates from Merton. Before we go into the detail of each town centre, and if I get the PowerPoint to work. It's probably worthwhile looking at what the council's role and remit is in terms of regeneration, because it spans on a number of levels which Merton and the control teams deliver. At the most strategic level, it's about delivering our local plan, which sets out a strategy and vision for each of our town centres, and some of those centres are very different from each other, they have different needs and different strategies. And it's about amplifying the council's role as an enabler for mixed use regeneration and growth. We're not always a direct delivery agent, but simply through our planning powers of highway authority, working with the Mayor of London, we can actually promote good growth across the borough. And with that as well, we've got a track record now in promoting better use of public spaces. In 2012, we pedestrianised Wimbledon Station Forecourt, extended the footways in Wimbledon for the Olympics. In 2014, there was a major public realm overhaul of Colliers Wood around the town in Baltic Close. And last year we finalised the Mitcham Town Centre upgrades. Really, part of our role, it's touched on earlier on tonight, it's about raising the profile of Merton, and raising the profile of our town centres for investment, places to invest, enjoy, live and work. At the more practical level, and I'll bring some examples forward, we really are on the ground delivering change in terms of a whole range of shopfront and shopping parade improvements in local neighbourhoods. We also input to the DC planning process, Merton's Design Review Panel, although it's independent, we manage the governance of that. And also one of the, it's not obvious to people on the street, but through our contracts and through planning conditions. We're actually securing jobs and apprenticeships for Merton residents as new developments come on the street. So I'll run through town centres in no major particular order. In Mitcham, as I mentioned, we officially launched the finish year Rediscover Mitcham with Heidi Alexander, the Deputy Mayor for Transport, who cited it as ahead of its time in terms of TfL, who now are promoting the Healthy Streets agenda, which is about promoting more public transport accessibility in town centres, better quality of public space and public realm. They really felt Mitcham's a couple of years ahead of the curve on that one. And that was reflected on us being shortlisted for the Local Government Chronicle Awards. We were in the Future Places category. We were 4th nationally, but it's good to see Mitcham actually recognised with TfL on that front. So now that the hardware is settled into Mitcham, our attention now focuses on getting housing and development underway. There's been a lot of development around Mitcham, and when I say around, it's like a donut. We had Rowan, Brenley, part of the gasworks, but it wasn't quite in the town centre. Through the local plan, we're now engaging proactively with a number of landowners, one significant one in the town centre itself, to look at a kind of mixed-use redevelopment of a major site in the town centre. Now these things are long, medium term, but it's good to see Mitcham finally in the spotlight in terms of investment. And with that in mind, we are currently putting the finishing touches to a funding bid. So the government have launched the Future High Streets Fund. The council is allowed to put 2 bids forward for that, and we're putting Mitcham Town Centre forward. Partially in response to what my last point was, there is a medium-term interest in development, but actually how do we take care of Mitcham in the interim? The public realm's looking good, the bus accessibility is now PTAL 5, it's a big improvement. And we actually need to do much more softer measures, so we're in supporting businesses, and the bulk of that bit is going to be around curating the market. The Mitcham market does a job, provides a local shopping offer, but markets can provide so much more in terms of culture, activity, food markets, pop-up cinemas. We've tried all of that in the past, but we actually need a long-term sustainable model of that. So that's what the Future High Streets Fund will be looking at. Just around Mitcham as well, we still continue to upgrade the transport network in partnership with TfL. We have just finished works to Eastfield Roundabout, which is now Eastfield Junction. That was to avoid bottlenecks and safety issues around the level crossings, so if you're aware of roundabouts, you often give way to traffic on the right, we've actually reversed that, so it gets traffic and cyclists across that roundabout and junction easier. We're going to follow that up with planting and public realm and upgrades, environmental upgrades shortly. The next major TfL major scheme is Biggs Marsh Junction. So that roundabout again has always been a bottleneck, and we'll get a situation where the town centre is now digital signals. Biggs Marsh isn't, when they're all coordinated, it'll actually, between that these fields, give us a much more coordinated traffic flow through Mitcham. And finally, just some local plan issues. We are continuing to collaborate with Mitcham Cricket Green Group. They are celebrating Mitcham Cricket Green's 50th anniversary. So we've got some small public realm developer funded upgrades there, so looking at some street signs and small improvements. And also really collaborate within the local plan. They've really come forward with a really proactive plan for Mitcham, for the Cricket Green area. There's a workshop shortly, so we're joining in on that to get the best outcome for the local plan. I'll take each segment and then take questions at the end, is that okay? So moving on to College Wood. I did show this image 6 months ago, the one with the night lights on it. We are still using some of the development contributions to upgrade a number of parades up and down Merton High Street. So the one on the right is actually across the road from the one we done last year. We have just completed the cleaning of the brickwork and restoration of the building above, and we continue to work with the shopkeepers below. We're looking to revamp all the shop fronts below. All the businesses are working well with us, so that design should be in planning shortly, and that gives a kind of complete look to that middle bit of College Wood High Street. College Wood's a town centre, really benefited from the public realm launch in 2016, and that was very evident at Christmas. We had the first Christmas light switch on at College Wood, first Christmas tree as well, and an all-nighter street party on Baltic Close. And that was a really good community effort from the businesses, councillors and residents involved. slightly outside the town centre, but worthwhile pointing out, town centres aren't all about shopping. The cultural offer is important too, and we have just worked with Merton Priory Chapter House, finishing the build of the new visitor centre. There's some utility connections to happen, but that's on track to open in April. 900 years in waiting. And we are also still working with TfL on a couple of cycleway, quietway improvements across Northampton Way and the Water Trail. And again, through the local plan, a number of developers and landowners in Collegeville are approaching us with pre-app discussions to help our housing needs. So turning to Morden, this is by far our biggest regeneration priority. It has been for a number of years. The work of the last 6 months really has been around working with Transport for London. We have agreed that Merton and TfL will form some form of partnership. That partnership is to pool our collective land resources and, as Mark mentioned earlier, to go to the market and get a development partner who can deliver close to £1 billion projects on behalf of Merton Council and their citizens. Those commercial negotiations are still ongoing. They are concluding shortly, but also the project of this scale, we need time to actually get it right and make sure it's the best way of delivering the regeneration required for Morden Town Centre. We also have a major funding bid with the Mayor of London, which has been successful so far, and the funding is allocated. The unlocking the funding is then dependent on the outcome of the first bullet point, which is concluding the partnership with TfL. So that work is continuing daily and ongoing. We look to conclude that shortly. We also haven't forgotten about the community. There was a lot of consultation last year around the vision for Morden. We actually engaged a lot of school kids. This isn't shown up too well, but you've got it in your hands out. We've done 7 primary schools around Morden. We engaged them when the kids were contributing to what they thought the vision of a future town centre was. I must say, from Popular Primary School, the vision for Morden is strong. We have Gucci next to KFC. And actually, in terms of 3 words, they wanted Morden to be fun, busy and happy, which is exactly what future is like. So it's good to get young people involved in that one. And they'll be our future residents. So good time. Really, just to recap on the current works then, we've got a lot of due diligence work. We have fed this through the Morden working group with cross-party councils on board. That's the financial viability, the transport planning, the master planning, the stock market testing, the funding bids. All of that has been churning around for 6 months now and is now all coming to a head. So really we're on track to launch one into the market to secure a development partner starting in summer 2019. And fundamentally, I think this image shows this is about a fundamental step change in quality of Morden. We know it's not the town centre people aspire to have. It's not utterly failing, it's not boarded up. However, there is a mismatch in terms of Merton's growth strategy. It's what will take the majority of our housing growth. And again, that's come through years of consultation. And again, not all about housing, it is high streets. We're looking for business spaces and workspaces. We know our industrial stock is full. We know the nature of workspaces is changing. We know whether the master plans looked at this same issue as well. Morden will take a proportion of commercial growth. It may not all be retail, but certainly ground floor active uses need to be much more flexible going forward. None of us know what retail will be doing in 3 years' time. But if we create the spaces flexible enough, it can adapt with the economy. So moving on to Wimbledon, and generally starting with detail before the strategy on this one. I think in the last scrutiny meeting I mentioned Queen's Road Curve. So we've done the upper levels of the shops there, cleaning the brickwork, restoring the plaster work, restoring the roof lines. We then moved on to the shop fronts, and actually the 2 images here are work we're now continuing to do at ground level. We're putting back in the stone detailing in between the stores. This is manufactured by a company in Mitcham, and then stuck on our shop in Wimbledon. And just up on top next to the Frank and Manca sign, we're restoring the old corbels which would have been there in the past. So if you've ever heard the devil is in the detail, it is. And these are all little touches we're putting back into shopping parades, again using development contributions. So while we'll look after the little stuff, the big stuff's happening. It was touched on earlier, the Wimbledon Master Plan, Cabinet member mentioned the responses. The plan is fundamentally to guide good quality growth. It is drawn from our existing planning policies, but it goes a bit further to explain how they may be implemented or interpreted. And we have got over 700 responses from residents, societies, landowners and workers in town. 700 is not an important number. We have got a huge wealth of information under that, which we are currently filtering through by theme, by who responded, and that's to be concluded in a report in June. We did provide some feedback headlined to the Borough Plan Advisory Committee last week, but I think it's right we take the right appropriate time to filter and digest all that information. It was bigger than any consultation we've had in terms of quality of data within it. All of that will lead to refinement and edits to the plan, and we hope to have that done by July, but with further updates as we get closer to that date. So for the moment we are busy filtering through that. However, also as a site in the master plan, I did mention earlier, a lot of our team is involved in public realm and public space. That's what gives life to a town centre. It's not all about buildings, it's not always planning applications. And as part of the master plan pop-ups, which some of the councils here attended, we had workshops on how we actually improve some of the public spaces in Wimbledon now. Again, looking at the SIL budget to do this. And certainly pick up from lessons in College and Mitcham. So these are the concept designs. These haven't been seen yet, but we hope to introduce this to the Wimbledon Community Forum later in the month. So this is a concept design for St Mark's Place, where the Alex is. We're looking at providing market stalls, more tree planting, seats, better quality paving. It still has to have access for vehicles to the church and service of the pub, so it won't be fully pedestrianised. But it's about looking at spaces we have now and seeing how can we just bring life and life in there. So hopefully this will be welcomed. We've already sent this to some of the residents and attendees to the workshop, so we will again collect feedback and produce a detailed design for later in the year. And similarly, the space at theatre where we still temporarily have the benches out there to prove we don't need the 2 roads. So this again is a concept design for how we can actually enhance the set of the theatre, create more public space around Wimbledon and a bit more planting. Again, in response to the feedback, we haven't put trees in front of the theatre. It is a grand old beautiful building. You don't need to cover that up with trees. Not saying the estate agents and Nando's is less beautiful, however, trees on that side will still clean up Wimbledon Town Centre, and again, we're quite limited in where we can put tree picks. So the plan here is more space for people, less space for cars. I'll obviously the panel for questions.
I want to talk about the strategy because I think we discussed that in full council, etc. It was just a tactical thing, really. Just at the bottom of one of those slides, you talked about the Deliveroos, etc. And I accept something needs to happen within the town centre to remove the bikes from bunging up the high street. But it's just really a request because the restaurant trade is losing a lot of business to the delivery apps, and essentially people are just buying a main course, taking it home, rather than selling all the high margin drinks. What it means is that the restaurants are closing with alacrity, and if we just said that these motorbikes, which nobody particularly likes, can't be around, then that will kill those restaurants because the kitchens will go to industrial units, and whilst that's great for their business, I don't think it's good for our town centres because we know we're losing retail. If we lose restaurants, you're left with boozers, basically anybody that can walk. And I would say that the council needs to actively find spots, not on the high street, not on the pavement, not outside the train station, for the delivery drivers, which are going to be in car parks which are permanent, so that would resolve the issue.
So thank you for reminding me of that point. I forgot that I was looking at the images. I fully agree with you, and that's exactly what we're doing. So we're not looking to get rid of delivery or delivery drivers. They are an essential part of the businesses now. People may walk past a restaurant on the high street and think it's dead, no one's in it. Actually, they're making a lot of business through deliveries. So it is part of the high street. It's just a technological change that just wasn't there a couple of years ago. So we're not in the business of telling a business they can't do their business. It's not a rule. However, it is having an impact on the public realm. Slightly exacerbated by roadworks at the moment around Wimbledon Bridge. But what we have is motorcyclists who are parking lawfully in motorcycle bays. That's what's there now. By working with Deliveroo and the apps, we can allocate designated areas of town centre where we can say, look, we can use this. We've done a lot of work with Love Wimbledon to actually see what are the main users of Deliveroo and Just Eat, because there's no point in putting dedicated bays in somewhere where it won't work. So for example, if we had a space in Hartwood Road car park, that's nowhere near the restaurants that are using those apps, and we don't want motorcycles cycling down that alleyway. So we've done a bit of work with Love Wimbledon to map where best could we locate these. It does tend to down the theatre end and up at the bridge end. So we're looking to refine that and working with colleagues in parking. We will have to allocate not a delivery bay, but more motorcycle parking bays. But fully appreciable.
Thank you for your detailed report. Just want to find out, is there a plan for fixed marches yet? Because I haven't seen one, so just wondered one's houses yet for the public.
Yeah, so I don't have it here yet. We have got a concept design still waiting approval from TfL Signals, but we will send that to all councils shortly for the redesign of the roundabout.
Thank you, Paul, for that update. It's very good. I'm glad to see the Mitcham one's finished for the time being. The one of curiousness to me is Morden, and you have a very nice image here which features one bus, but Morden has many buses. So how is this scheme going to be developed without a radical rethinking of the transport network?
The Morden scheme is being developed with a radical rethink of the transport network. So as part of the due diligence, we also work with TfL Surface, TfL Buses, London Underground, looking at what the potential future demand is for all modes of transport, how we then adopt TfL's Healthy Street strategy. This image looks like there's no road at all, actually between that public space and the station. There's still a road, maybe bus only. The issue with Morden isn't necessarily the bus stops, because people need the bus stops, they sit on High Street. It's the bus stands. So what you see outside Morden now is the bus stands are where drivers have to brake. We've been modelling, does that have to happen in Morden at all? Because bus routes are circular. Do they need 8 happening at once? Is there other parts of town it could go? We've been going through multiple options with transport on that one. So the vision there isn't no traffic at all, but it's simply about rebalancing space for people. If you look at from the station to KFC, about 90% of that space is tarmac count for vehicles, and the pavements are then overcrowded, but they can rebalance that.
Yes, thank you. Well, there's one here that I quite like the look of. It's the one in the St Mark's Place, which so happens to be in Hillside. Have you gone back to the various residents who've been participating in the workshops? So I know one I was talking to last week was particularly perturbed, although that person was always slightly angry and perturbed. So are you sure that this will actually meet the aspirations of the various residents and people involved, including my own war colleagues who haven't seen this yet?
I don't think I can imagine who you're talking about. So this is called, what we've done is emailed back to the people who were at the workshops, so that was a mixture of councillors and those residents. We're getting feedback back from the email on that now. We want to make sure that's there before we present it to the forum. There will be a full public consultation after that. I think it's over by the people that gave us time of day to come in and work through this initially, got the initial feedback, but certainly we will roll it out to all councillors and the wider public for comment before we fix the detailed design. I know this looks like a very polished image, it's a concept. So there is further work to do on this.
And now we go on to the performance monitoring. With Nick McLean having resigned from the panel, we need to appoint a performance monitoring lead. And any nominations?
I'm pleased to nominate myself if that works.
Okay. Alright. Any more nominations? I thought in the interest of cross-party working, but Anthony Fairclough would like to be
Perfectly happy to let Ben.
If you want, I'll take it.
Okay, if everyone's happy for Ben to do that, then that's fine.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Performance monitoring is, I know we've just got about 3 items on performance monitoring, just housing, housing needs and libraries. I think are two items, because I believe the other reports weren't ready in time.
That's correct, yeah. The reports haven't been signed by CNT.
So we don't really have anything really.
I'd be delighted to, but they're not my areas.
Oh, right.
They're all green, that's why I'd be delighted to.
As Chris said, they're all green. Well done.
I'm not quite so green.
Yeah, there's a line.
Don't spoil it. Okay, so there's only 2 red items on here. I'll talk about the libraries one. Is that purely because somebody got the target quite dramatically? Because I don't recall it being $1 million before. So is it just an ambitious target, or what's the reason behind that?
I'll have to come back to you on that. Talk to Anthony Hopkins. I'm going to have to come back to you on that point.
There's a high number what we've got. That's what I'm saying, it's not very high in the value, but I think it's just been very keen on $1 million. It seems very round. If you can achieve it, fair play to them if you can in the future. So we'll leave it in there, the target. But I think generally the number of 929,500 almost is downhill compared to previous years.
And he's got 3 points.
And yeah, indeed. So
I'll pick it up with Anthony and come back to you.
Thank you. Thanks. I wondered if you could clarify, Steve, what CRP 62, which is the second one down, what that is. It sort of seems obvious, but the value is 387, and I know from your report that the homelessness prevention was sort of in the high 400s, and so I wasn't entirely clear what that figure of 387 was.
This was January 19, so I think the target that you'd have in front of you in the written paper was 426 on the number of preventions at the end of Feb. That can be my only explanation right now.
I think I'd understood the 426 as a sort of cumulative figure rather than a monthly figure. So if that was true, then that monthly figure of 387 seems very high.
Well, certainly it's not a monthly figure. Absolutely not. Can I come back to you on that?
Yes, thank you.
it's the old time unknowns, what's a monthly, what's an annual.
Yeah.
How's it is down?
No further questions. We're going to the vote program.
We don't have any additional things. Everyone happy with the work programme for April?
Will change.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're changing the performance monitoring to Ben Buffer.
Yeah, we should tend how to do that.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we meet with Rosie later on and we'll talk about what you need to do. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it really.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
One just those might be worth mentioning at the stage about scrutiny annual review and get people coming.
Oh yes, there's the Scrutiny annual review. I think Julia's emailed everybody the link, so do take part in it and send it back if you haven't already done that. And yeah, and finally, I suppose there's the Morden Leisure opening on the 30th of April at 2:30. If you'll hope to see you all there.
What was that again?
The Morden Leisure Centre opening. Yeah, Morden Leisure Centre.
Official plans opening. Invites went out formally today. I don't know how generous Signal this is going to be. You might want to mention that to him.